Hello, it's Toby from Heavyweight MMA. Today with the Australian Dan Seven with the Funky Mo, Mr. Razor Rob Wilkinson. How are you, man?
I'm good, Toby. How you doing?
Good, man. As I was saying, you're in the limelight now, man. Lots of people chasing you for interviews, etc. How does it feel?
Yeah, it's a bit strange. Definitely this fight leading into the championship fight. I've had a lot more interviews and that sort of stuff than I've ever had before, but I'm happy with it.
What do you think that is, man? Because PFL is pretty good. It's growing. It's got some really good fighters, especially in the card that you're fighting on. I noticed there's some great names in there. But you've been in UFC before. Why is it that now you're sort of gaining traction just because of your performances in the PFL so far, you think?
Yeah, I guess the performances, and as you said, like it's a big card, fighting for a world title, 6 world titles on the line that night. So it's a pretty big event for MMA that comes around once a year.
Yeah, it's kind of cool because like as UFC kind of moves on and gets bigger and bigger, there's a bit of a fallout from it as well. So you still get some great fighters that have come out of the UFC fighting on cards. Like on that card, I noticed Shane Burgos, Marlon Moraes, Jeremy Stevens, and there's a few others in the card that I kind of forget as well. But yeah, this card is basically up to the level of a UFC event almost.
Yeah, definitely. It's got a huge amount of talent, I'd say, and I think quite a few guys have left either been released or chosen, like Shane Burgos, to leave the UFC and come over to the PFL. And then it's actually been interesting because you see a lot of these guys coming from the UFC and not necessarily going that well, and that kind of just shows how much talent and the level of the fighters in the PFL as well. Like Anthony Pettis, I think he's had 5 fights with the PFL and only had 1 win. So it definitely shows that there's good fighters there.
Yeah, that's a question actually. So when you jump onto you see ONE FC as well, Mighty Mouse went over there, got beaten. A few people that you think are unbeatable get shown up, right? And then the question is UFC really the pinnacle of MMA, or is it just people are there are kind of lucky to be there and then they've got a high level, obviously, but is that really the best fighters in the world, or you think there are a lot of other fighters around the world that are at that level but just don't get that opportunity?
It's definitely a bit of both. Obviously, they've got super high level fighters, and probably everyone in the top 15 they're up there. But obviously, there's a lot of fighters out there. The UFC don't end up with them all, and there's a lot of high level talent from all over. And we kind of see that more and more with these other promotions, PFL, ONE FC, and I guess Bellator. And when some of those guys come across. Like Michael Chandler coming across from Bellator, and he loses. He's lost in Bellator, comes across and wins. I know he's like 1-2, lost 2, but he's ranked in the top 5 in the UFC, and there's heaps of good talent, not just in the UFC. And the more of these promotions keep growing and people realizing that, I think it's good for the sport.
True, man. And how would you say you fought in UFC obviously a couple of times? How would you say it compares as the treatment of the athletes and the professionalism of the show and everything in your eyes?
It's similar. UFC probably have everything kind of behind the scenes and stuff organized a little bit better. Like they're really good with all that stuff, and you do get looked after really nicely when you're fighting. Like picked up from the airport, like a private car, nice hotel, and all that sort of stuff. But everything else, like it's pretty much the same on the show, on the night, like the PFL on the night of the show. It's run really smoothly, and as you can see, like they put on a really good show. It looks really good on TV, and it has really good fights. So I think that's the main thing.
Looks amazing on TV, man. It looks like almost like a video game. They use sort of different effects than some of the other promotions, right? So it comes across as a different thing, and they got this running stats on the screen, and that I'm pretty impressed actually the way they run it.
Yeah, I like the stats, and they've been adding the ref cams in the last couple of fights, and they put a little chip in our gloves, and it comes up on how fast you're punching.
How awesome is that? That's great. That's like innovation, right? And that's the sort of thing that will lead them to, being more and more popular. Yeah, that's cool.
I think that's a huge thing for them, like doing stuff like they're not just trying to copy the UFC, they're doing their own thing. And like the tournament style, obviously it's different, and it's, as you said, it's kind of good in that sense and growing.
Just thinking of the card that was on the weekend, Sugar Sean O'Malley versus Peter Yan. Those stats would have kept things a little bit more like under. Everyone's going crazy about the Sean O'Malley winning online anyway, but he did have a higher rate of strikes than that. So if you had those running tallies, it might make people sort of see the fight a little bit differently, right? So it's not a bad thing. But then if the people get the wrong decision at the end, and you got these stats that are working both ways, right? People will be more outraged.
Yeah, that's true. It is hard. It is hard to tell, but yeah, that fight, obviously lots of people think Peter won. I probably do too, but obviously when you look at the stats, and he did land a lot of big shots to the head and hurt him a few times, and I guess the judges thought that was better than the kind of control on the ground.
That's it, man. And looking at these stats and that, for you, there's almost no need, right? Because you're a finisher, man. You don't really let fights go into the distance and get decisions too often, man. 18 fights, 16 wins, 2 losses only coming at UFC. You're a good finisher, bro. Have you got that tenacity that you just want to finish people? Is that what you kind of go into the fight thinking?
Yeah, definitely. I'm always looking for the finish, and I think I'm good at seeing when they're hurt, or taking an opportunity to kind of get that finish. I kind of joke, but also seriously, like, especially when I started out, you're having your first few fights, my first fights, and sometimes I forgot to breathe, you're kind of going so hard and intense. Obviously, I'm much more relaxed now, but I remember thinking like, oh, fuck, I'm getting tired. I got to finish the fight before I gas out, kind of thing. But yeah, I'm always looking to finish. Like, I'm not rushing anything. I'm never like going in there trying to think, oh, I got to knock this guy out straight away or whatever. But I think I'm just good at seeing when it happens and seeing the finish when it is there.
And looking at those couple of losses that you had were in the UFC. So you lost them in the major organization that everyone knows. You're kind of down on yourself a little bit for that. I hear you talking, and you're like, you're kind of saying you weren't really ready and this sort of thing. But to be honest, I rewatched the fight, and you gave Israel, even though Israel was a while back, you gave him one of his harder fights in those first bit, but then you look like you gassed a bit as you moved on through the rounds, and that was fighting at a lighter weight. So that's one of the reasons, right?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I changed weight class for sure. And like, not saying I wasn't ready. Like, I'm sure, my first, like just about everyone in the UFC, my first fight was short notice. I probably shouldn't have taken it. Like, I'm not trying to make excuses, and I accept the losses, and I've learned from them. But I had come off knee surgery. I was pretty much on the couch for 3 months, and then literally started training for 2 days, and then got the phone call to fight in the UFC in like 4 weeks. So it just wasn't smart of me to kind of take that fight, that first one. And then obviously second one against Israel, the weight cut wasn't great. I cut a lot of weight, and had a short period of time to kind of rehydrate as well over in Perth. And as you said, like, I just kind of gassed out after that first round. And since then I kind of decided, I got released. I took some time off. Obviously it was like heartbreaking, UFC was my goal since I started, training, and finally got there, and then have 2 fights and be out, within like 8 months or whatever it was. It was definitely hard, but I definitely think I've learned a lot from those experiences, and just kind of helped me to become a better fighter.
And part of that learning and getting better from the losses was, I heard you mention that you did some training with the CKB lads, and now you're obviously overseas training. Was that kind of prompted by that, or you're already doing that at that point? I'm not sure, 100% sure of your gym journey.
So I had moved to Sydney just before I got in the UFC, and I was training out of a gym there at VT1.
Which gym was that one?
VT1.
Oh, yeah.
Richie Walsh was from there. He's like the known UFC fighter, I guess. But
yeah.
And it was good. I definitely learned a lot training there.
Is that the Reznikov brothers?
Reznikov and Dylan Reznikov, the brothers. Really good coaches and everything. But I just didn't love living in Sydney. And after I fought Israel, Eugene, his coach, reached out to me, and I think it was when he was fighting Brad Tavares. Asked if I'd come down and be be a body to help him train. And I took him up on that, and I went down there for about a month, and that was a really good experience. And I learned a lot from their gym, and even just talking to Israel. And then I kind of moved back home to Tasmania, and I was training there. And my goal was to base myself out of there, but definitely do more training trips and go to city kickboxing and go to the mainland and train and with different gyms. But obviously COVID made that a bit difficult over a period of time, and that was one of the reasons I decided to stay in America after the first fight. I just didn't want to risk if Australia like shut its borders down again or anything like that. I didn't want to get stuck somewhere or not be able to fly because of COVID, or I got COVID and couldn't fly for a fight, and that was a reason I couldn't continue in the tournament.
Yeah, man. And being you just mentioned about going back to Tassie and that, being from that sort of place, like Tassie's obviously a little bit isolated, a little bit of a small town sort of feel compared to, like you mentioned, Sydney. How is it to be? Does it feel like interesting to you to be out of that sort of environment in the States? You're in Denver, right? And dealing with different culture and all that sort of thing. Is it interesting to you? Does you feel like a small town guy that's in the big sort of out in the big world now, or it doesn't feel like
that? I'm used to traveling around. I've traveled to a lot of different countries and a lot of gyms and train, so it doesn't feel like that. I love Hobart. I love Tasmania, and that's kind of where I want to buy a house and live, kind of thing. But Denver's, I'm not kind of stuck in the city. We're a bit outside the city, and it's like beautiful as well. So I'm able to get my nature fix and go for like hikes on the weekend and get out into the mountains and do little things like that. So yeah, it's a really beautiful place, Colorado, that's for sure.
I'm not familiar with Denver. Do they have like mountain lions or wolves or bears or anything like that?
Yeah, they've got pretty much all that. I saw an elk pretty close, like a big bull elk with its horns. That was that was a pretty cool experience. I was about literally 1 meter away from it when we were doing a hike one time, and it didn't seem phased. We went up to Yellowstone, which is the state above us, and I saw some big bison. I haven't seen any bears, which I've been just kind of disappointed about, but also obviously don't want to see them too close. I think I saw a mountain lion, but I was kind of driving out of the mountains, and it just kind of crossed the road in front of me. I wasn't too close to it, but it definitely looked like a big cat moving. So that was kind of cool. But yeah, it's funny. All the guys,
that environment, man. I'm not hiking in a place that has fucking bears and that unless I'm fully strapped. I don't know. Do you arm yourself, or you just go cruising up there thinking, I'm a light heavyweight now, probably a few kilos out of fight, I can take this bear, or what?
Some of them have someone recommended getting bear spray for some of the walks we did, and there's signs on lots of the walks saying like bring your bear spray. And it's kind of funny they have signs of like what to do if you see a bear, or what to do if you see a mountain lion. Yeah. And it was funny reading the difference between the two. Like you see a bear, they obviously say like they say like often they're scared of just human voice. So like you're meant to speak. If you go in a group, you're talking, and often scares them away. But obviously have your bear spray and use that if they come close. And then it says if they come, keep coming at you, or they said they do a charge, but sometimes it's just like a bluff charge. So they say stand your ground if it charges. But then if it attacks, you're meant to just like lay on the ground and play dead and like put your hands over your head, and hopefully it kind of pretty much gets bored of you and doesn't kill you. And I was like, that seems like a weird strategy. If a bear attacks you, just kind of just cop it.
Yeah, man. Like just lie down. Like you've seen what they do to people, man. They just chew up people's heads and stuff. They might not want to kill them, but they're definitely coming close to it, right? Like the last thing I saw was a guy recently where his mate saved him or helped fight off a bear, right? You see that one?
Yeah, it was like four college wrestlers and bears, and they all kind of...
And the guy goes, I could feel the bear clamping down on my head, like the teeth grinding on the bone or something like that. It's like, I don't think I'm lying down for that too long.
Yeah, just crushing. I can feel it, scraping its teeth on my bones and stuff. Yeah. I saw another one, Joe Rogan. I don't think it was the same one, but like a guy was kind of like almost on a rock or cliff, and a bear just came out of nowhere and attacked, and it like moved, and then he was trying to get it, and he was kicking the bear in the face because he was kind of higher up. And like they don't look fast, but geez, like when they're attacking you, obviously they move quickly. And
That's what you say. That guy said, I think pretty sure that one they had bear spray, or maybe it was the other one. One of them they had bear spray, and they said they didn't have time to pull it out. Like, this is what happens, right? You got to actually get
Yeah.
out of where you got it and
Yeah,
hold
you're
it
gonna have
up.
it like in a holster. Hang on, I
Yeah.
didn't realize how dark it was. I'll turn the light on.
Nice.
But yeah, and the sign for mountain lion says the opposite. It says like chuck. Like if you have anything like rocks or something, like chuck them at it. Be noisy, be big. And then it said if it attacks you, fight back. Like don't play dead or it'll just kill you. So you're gonna
And then you get confused and fuck it up completely and do the opposite, right? Lie down and it starts like trying to choke you out with its teeth. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. People always say Australia is like a dangerous sort of place, but fuck, we've got some dangerous things. There's quite a lot of sharks down where you are as well, crocs up north, but there's nowhere really that you're going to cruise around and have something that's going to hunt you and potentially try and eat you or something like that, right? Like there's a few dangerous snakes and spiders, but it's not really as dangerous as people think, yeah?
Yeah, definitely. That's one thing I've been saying. Like all the guys at the gym and everyone's like, fuck going to Australia. Everything wants to kill you. Like a lizard will kill you. You'll get bitten by a spider or a snake. I'm like, you guys have mountain lions and bears. Like, I'd way rather see a spider. You can just step on it or whatever. Like, what are you talking? Like, I don't know why they seem so scared of Australia.
That's true, man. Hey, to jump back on track,
Yeah.
We're off track slightly talking about running around Australia getting attacked. But the PFL Fighters League, we've been talking about it, but you got your big fight coming up. The guy's name is what's his name? Is it
Omari Akhmedov?
Omari Akhmedov. Yeah, tricky name for me anyway. This guy's very experienced, man, and in a way, it could be a bit of a redemption for you, I reckon, because he was a pretty experienced UFC fighter, and you did a couple fights in the UFC. You didn't get the win, but now you're fighting someone that's pretty much a UFC veteran. He's still in the game. He's still dangerous. And you got to fight him, man. It's a pretty tough one. He's a pretty much an all-rounder, right? Like he likes to throw hands. He's a good wrestler. He's got some weaknesses, but not blatant weaknesses. He's a pretty skilled guy.
Yeah, definitely. He's as you said, he's had a lot of fights in the UFC. He's fought some really high-level guys. He's fought like Chris Weidman. He was ranked in the top 15, top 10 at one point at middleweight. But these are the kind of fights I want to be having. I feel good. I've won my 3 fights so far this year in the PFL, and I want to have that name. I want to be kind of start getting recognized as one of the better fighters in the division or in the world. And to do that, obviously, you've got to beat people with names and beat people with good records. So, as you said, yeah, he's a well-rounded fighter. I'm at the kind of stage I expect everyone I fight to be good. I'm not expecting to have any easy fights. He's got decent hands. He's got some good low kicks, and he's a good wrestler. I think that's what he'll be trying to do against me is probably kind of close that gap and use his wrestling. But yeah, I'm excited for the fight, and beating someone like him, it's only does good things for me. He's got a good following. He's got a good record. He's got a lot of experience, and beating him, especially for a world title, that kind of hopefully steps me up to the next level as well. Starts getting me kind of more recognition.
Yeah, man. You mentioned that people kind of forget your original sort of style was grappling based, right? Wrestling based. So it's not unusual for you to be able to fight in that sort of area. And then on the stand up, I would say like he's quite strong, but he's a little wild, a little bit loopy punches. You seem a little bit cleaner. You've got a little bit more. I think what I'm thinking when I'm watching him fight, I think you might be able to work some of those straight punches because gets quite loopy with the punches, right?
Yeah, definitely. He likes his overhand and throws a lot of hooks. I guess a lot of those kind of shorter people in the division do that as well. But yeah, as you said, I want to use my straight punches, keep my length, and kind of pick him apart, kind of sniper him from the outside.
Also, he's very like head down, right? So there's that potential for a knee as well, right? Like or a front kick to the face because he really throws that head forward when he throws punches. Yeah.
You should be in my coaching meetings after game plans. That's exactly what we've been seeing in his fights as well. Yeah, he ducks that head a lot, especially when he throws the overhand. So knees and uppercuts, which are both things are really good tools of mine. So I think it plays well into my game plan.
Yeah, man. I was going to ask you before, like today, it's where you are. It's the evening, and
Yeah.
I was wondering, what's your typical day? You're a month out, so you still got a bit of time, but it should be peaking towards kind of your max, right? So what do you got? What was your day today like, as an example?
So every day we've got practice at 10 till 2. Sorry, 10 to 12.
I was thinking
Uh,
that's a big session,
yeah,
4 hours.
2 hour session. Today's wrestling, and then we go for a run afterwards. After today, I had a physio. I had been, a few people been sick. I had been a bit sick over the last few days. So normally I add in another session. I do like assault bike, some cardio and power work, but I
Yep.
skipped just because I'm not 100% at the moment, just to get over that kind of little sickness. But yeah, every day we're training decent sessions, 10 to 12, and then strength and conditioning I'm doing 4 times a week as well. So after that, later in the day, and then add in like two privates with the coach. That kind of varies in times, either before training or after trainings, and yeah. So training volume, I wasn't used to even the 2 hour sessions back home. I used to do probably kind of maybe more sessions, but 1 hour, maybe 90 minutes. But the 2 hour sessions were kind of, when I first got here, they were hard, but now I'm used to that kind of style.
Yeah, fair enough, man. And as you get closer, obviously you're going to be picking it up a little bit and then dropping back. Do you find there's big differences in the way they sort of train there compared to where you've come from in Australia? Like, is it more scientific? Is it less scientific? It is pretty much the same, or what do you think?
Uh, it's similar. They definitely train hard over here, and we've got strength and conditioning out at Landau's that it's good that it's more on like a bigger scale, like back, especially at home in Tasmania with me. Lots of the focus, if I had a fight, we didn't have heaps of guys fighting necessarily. So like the focus could be around me. Over here, the strength and conditioning coaches make sure they're talking and they know exactly what's going on with Mark, the head coach over here. So they plan deload weeks together, so they kind of know what we're doing and know kind of how hard to push us, which is good. And it's also just as I said, a bigger level. There's often 30 plus guys on the mat every day, kind of thing, and everyone's between amateur and pro, but like high level guys, and all got the same goals and aspirations of being that high level world champion. So it's good to be around a group like that.
Yeah, man, they're good guys. To be honest, most of the good guys that I've had a talk with, especially like CKB, a few of the other guys, there are the thing they say is that there's such a big amount of talent, their depth of talent that kind of drives them up, right? Like they can't go in and have an easy day. Like even against the guys that are amateur, they got a chance of getting, destroyed on any given day if they don't keep to their game. So it pushes all ships rise together, sort of thing, right?
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, City Kickboxing is definitely the same. They got a huge amount of talent there, and same, and that's the same thing. Like back home at my gym, Hybrid Training Center in Hobart, we might not have like a lot of those big names or fighting on big international cards, but even just like, and that's one thing I even learned when I went to City Kickboxing the first time. Before, kind of really, it was definitely huge then, but like it's really blowing up since then. You just need like good training partners. Like there was guys that were coming in and pushing Israel with the wrestling, and they weren't even necessarily professional fighters, but they'd come in a couple of times a week and be his training partner and really put it on him. And that's kind of what you need in the gym. I guess not everyone has to be that super high level, but as long as you're getting pushed in the gym in different aspects, that's what you need.
Yeah, man. You just mentioned back in Tassie. I'm pretty impressed, man, because I've tried to interview 3 people from Tasmania. The first 2 are a no-show, and now you're here on time, actually early. So I'm very impressed, man. Thank you.
I was actually very early. I had an interview before this, and I got confused which one I had, and I was opening up this link like half an hour before we're going to start. And I was like, "Where is this guy?" And then I realized I was on the wrong link.
That's it. Well, you restored my faith in Tasmanian, so it's good, bro.
Who are the other 2?
I'll tell you after. Actually, one was Sean Etchell, who's got a fight coming up this weekend. Is it this? Yeah.
Yeah, this weekend we got a couple Tassie boys on that card. Actually, I think
And
Mayne.
Dave, Dave, what's Dave's name from last weekend? He fought on XFC. Dave something.
Dave
Anyway, it
Butt.
doesn't matter. I can't remember the name, but it was Dave something. Anyway,
No.
bro. So only a couple more questions to go. Just your advice for people on training and motivation, because I think, to be a MMA fighter at a high level takes like incredible amounts of motivation to train, two times a day, up to 2 hours a time. It's pretty crazy. So what are your tips for your general sort of person? Like, how do you stay motivated and train, or whatever else you're trying to do?
I've definitely had that question a bit, or people even messaging me on Instagram, like young guys, or saying that, having problems with motivation. And I think you can't rely on motivation, because motivation comes and goes. Like, you're not always going to be motivated to get up. You're going to be tired. You're going to be sore. So if you're relying on motivation to train when you're not motivated, then you're not training. So a big thing for me is, and that's one of the things I kind of write down each day, is being consistent and being disciplined. And you're never going to get anywhere. Like, obviously, you see some people that kind of skyrocket in the sport, but even then, like, they've done, like, say for example, Israel. As soon as he was in the UFC, he had like 5 fights in 12 months and won the title in under 2 years. But he'd obviously been fighting kickboxing and been training and fighting for years and years behind the scenes before kind of coming into that into the UFC and showing that. And you're never going to get, like, a big thing. I think people think like, oh, I've got to train really hard when I got to fight camp. You just got to be disciplined and consistent and not expect to get everywhere in kind of like in a month or in a year. And just being consistently training and kind of doing the little things, eating well, recovering well, doing all that sort of stuff. Staying consistent, I think, is my biggest thing. And that's one thing I've been really focused on, especially since I got released from the UFC. And, I haven't been fighting necessarily super consistently. COVID, everything like that. Everyone hasn't been fighting, but staying consistent with my training and just kind of making sure I was ready for when I kind of got this opportunity.
Yeah, man. And you mentioned about not always feeling motivated. Do you wake up some mornings and just go, fuck, I don't want to go train today, man? Like, do you feel like that sometimes?
Of course, man. Like, fighting's hard, training's hard. You kind of get beat up in the gym. You're pushing yourself. You're training 2 or 3 times a day, and you're often exhausted. But focusing on recovery is a really big thing. But some days you might just want to sleep in or whatever. But it's easy. It's a bit easier at the moment. I've got a big opportunity. I've got a fair bit of motivation with a world title fight coming up and $1 million to go with it. So I wouldn't say motivation's lacking. And it doesn't stop me even when I am tired to get up and get into the gym, for sure.
Hey, speaking about opportunity, like what's the pay for being like the level you're at now with PFL? Is it okay? Like, is it reasonable as a professional fighter, or you feel like it's not enough, or what do you feel?
I mean, I definitely think most of the pay for the starting off guys, like in the UFC or whatever, starting off contracts, 10,000. It's not great at all. I think that all should be a lot higher. That being said, the PFL, I'm getting paid more than the starting pay in the UFC, and it jumps up quicker as well. So it has jumped up a lot quicker each fight. And then obviously you're fighting for $1 million. That's huge, And I've seen some mixed opinions on the UFC fighter pay, and obviously once you're there, if you kind of start re-signing a few fights, then you're going to start getting paid well. But I think for that level, like any of those, like PFL, UFC, like to only be getting like 10, 20 grand a fight, maybe only fighting twice a year, 2 or 3 times a year. Lots of guys I know, still working, and they're a professional athlete. They're competing at the highest level, but they have to have another job just to kind of get by, as well as do all their training. So I think once you're at that level, you should be able to, getting paid enough that you're not having to do any work, and you can solely focus on your fighting and all that comes with it. So you can, be the best athlete and best fighter you can be.
Yeah, man. It's a hard life, so you want to try and get some decent compensation for it. Hey, the last question, man. You mentioned your goal that you write down a lot is becoming a world champion. I think you mentioned in 2022.
Yes.
That goal, is that a goal because there's no like united world champion within MMA, right? Is that to be a world champion in PFL? Is it to be a world champion in the premier organization or any sort of leading organization?
It's to be a world champion, like in a major promotion, for sure. And I'd say, in my mind at the moment, and probably everyone else's, like the top 4: UFC, PFL, ONE FC, and Bellator. So kind of was to be a world champion pretty much in any of those 4 kind of promotions. Yeah.
Cool, man. Thanks. Hey, the last thing I forgot, I remembered something I wanted to ask. In PFL, is there any testing, bro? Because I've seen some pretty big dudes over there, gas-looking dudes.
There are some big dudes. They do test. You get tested. Not like USADA where you get randomly tested. You get tested for your fights. So you get tested fight night, but they're not coming to your door at 6 a.m. and waking you up and making you do a piss test. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Hey, bro, so great. Have good luck with your fight against Omari Akhmedov, man. I'll be watching and cheering for you, bro. It'll be good to see you get that win. And, yeah, all the best with your training leading up to the fight.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you, Toby.
Cool, man. Thanks for your time, mate.